Hello, I'm Sean Lim, and welcome to After 10. President Park Geun-hye celebrated her first year in office by kicking off the second with a brand new economic innovation plan. But what will it take for her to clean up corruption and pave a new path for the economy? Find out on today's After 10. Stay with us.
국민 여러분, 경제혁신 3개년 계획은 우리 대한민국이 다시 한번 대도약하기 위해서 반드시 이뤄내야 할 과제라고 생각합니다.
It has been a year since President Park was inaugurated, and the president laid out measures to boost the Korean economy on her televised address to the nation.
기초가 튼튼한 경제, 역동적인 혁신 경제, 내수 수출 균형 경제 등 3대 핵심 전략을 제가 임기 내내 직접 챙기면서 강력하게 추진해서 성공적으로 이끌어 갈 것입니다.
On the three-year economic development plan announced by the president, President Park stressed the main goals of the nation's economy as well as the so-called 474 vision.
잠재 성장률을 4%대로 끌어올리고 고용률 70%를 달성하고 1인당 국민소득 3만 불을 넘어 4만 불 시대로 가는 초석을 다져 놓겠습니다.
On today's After 10, we take an in-depth look at Park Geun-hye's administration's three-year economic development plan as a key policy to boost the nation's economy.
Professor Kim, thank you so much for joining us tonight on After 10.
My pleasure to be here.
Well, in line with President Park's one-year anniversary, she kicked off her second year by announcing her three-year economic innovation plan.
Right.
What stands out to you about this plan, and what significance do you think this will have on the Korean economy?
For the past year, since her presidential inauguration, she's been quite successful in diplomacy. In economic performance, however, she wasn't quite successful. Economically, Korea seems to be doing quite well in terms of low inflation and price stability and large current account surpluses. But people are also concerned about the slower growth. The economy has been growing in real terms at a rate much slower than its potential growth. And they're also concerned about the ever-accumulating unemployed people. And if this situation continues for the remaining 4 years until the end of President Park's regime, she is going to be an unsuccessful president. So she has to do something to get the economy back on. And I think her announcement is going to have a very significant impact on the mind of the people, and it's going to, change the structures of the Korean economy a lot.
Well, it seems President Park wants to ascend the economy in the direction of reforms and innovation. Are those two areas the biggest obstacles towards Korea's future outlook in terms of the economy?
Yeah, there would be some obstacles in carrying out those reforms and the restructuring policies. But the thing is that it is important to change the paradigm, because so far things been done in the same way. And now people see that nothing much is going to change. And the people getting disappointed about the future prospect.
What are the aspects that are the same?
Lack of enthusiasm. And they don't see much of investment opportunities. And they get discouraged. What they see is things are turning unfavorably for their future investment activity.
And the culprits behind that are?
And then this would bring in the vicious circle. As people would expect that the business people would make less investment, and they know that the income is going to be less, and then they, getting, discouraged, and they don't spend as much as they would. So less investment, less spending, and then the less income, and then that's going to, be repeating. So we all be losers.
So there are three areas in President Park's economic plan that really focus on reforms, namely reforming the abnormalities in public organizations, reforming the underground economy, and reducing corporate bullying. Are these changes long coming? We've heard that these are areas that many administrations before have tried to tackle. The public has seemed to indicate that they've wanted these changes. Is it going to happen this time, do you think?
Look at it this way. The president seems to change the shape and the structure of the system. And as she sees it, there are three things. One thing is to implement the reforms in the public sector, and at the same time stimulate the private sector. And if things are going on under underground, and that's no good. They said it's about the size of the underground economy is about 20%. So now, she thinks that better legalize the underground economy, so that domestic spending is going to be stimulated, and so that way the public sector reforms and private sector stimulation and legalizing the underground activities. So, they would believe that the economic structure or the shape is going to be changed.
So reducing household debt does free up purchasing power down the road, and, and if the government does implement their plan to reduce household debt, that may give help to the domestic economy.
Right.
But really, can Korea move away from its dependence on exports? That's also part of the plan.
Well, export, the government cannot control very much. Okay, if you want to sell your products, produced in Korea, you have to find the people who want to buy. So you go out and explore the new markets overseas. Now, if the people outside the country like your products, then you can sell. But so your products are so good, but if the government doesn't want you to sell them abroad, that's nonsense. Okay, so to that extent, the government has very little to control as far as exports are concerned. But perhaps they can show the future investment opportunities, because they know, they have better knowledge, information about the export market, in foreign countries. But I think the most important thing is that the business leaders and, people should have more confidence in their investment.
There's been moves to raise minimum wages in countries around the world. Do you think that sort of movement will come to Korea in terms of trying to boost domestic spending?
Cutting the minimum wage is something different. But if, say, I realize that these days the quality of the Korean products, medium price, items, or even some higher, high price items, the qualities are really impressive. And, foreign people, they love to buy Korean products, okay? If the Korean products are in high demand, just let them go ahead and sell them abroad. So there's nothing wrong with the export activity. As I say again, if we see that the domestic spending is too much weak, then some other policies need to be undertaken to stimulate the domestic demand.
Well, Korea's finance minister Hyun Suk attended a G20 finance ministers and central bank governors meeting before Park Geun-hye's announcement of her economic plan. What sort of coordination is there between the G20 and Korea in terms of our three-year economic blueprint?
No, he participated or attended the G20 finance ministers and central bankers meeting, and he requested that Korea is ready to welcome more foreign direct investment, and the investment environment is going to be more favorable, and the foreign participants acknowledge that Korea is not like other emerging countries, and Korea's fundamentals are good enough for their investment. So that's good for. And at the same time, actually, Deputy Prime Minister Hyun had been concerned that the tapering of the U.S. Fed's quantitative easing would have some serious impact on the Korean economy. And some of the participants replied that, because somewhat the result of the tapering of the quantitative easing was somewhat exaggerated. So that was, kind of good news for. And he did make, Minister Hyun made a very good proposal. That is, in order to stimulate the investment for any country, he proposed what they call the PPP program, public-private partnership program. The idea is that the government provides legal and institutional support, institutional services, whereas the private entrepreneurs still undertake the natural business risk. So that way, the business people can more aggressively go out and make investment. So the PPP program was well accepted, and he's going to make it in the G20 summit meeting next time. So that was a good proposal related partly to stimulate private investment in Korea, and obviously that's one of the important backbones of the three-year innovation plan.
오늘도 빨간색 옷을 입고 나왔습니다. 앞으로 저는 이 옷을 투자 활성화복이라고 부르려고 합니다.
Some similarities, at least just in the title, between President Park's three-year economic innovation plan and her father, President Park Chung-he's five-year economic development plans. Are they similar or are they vastly different?
Partly, could be similar, partly entirely different. As I understand, President Park started his five-year economic plan strategy starting from 1962. The first round of five-year economic plan period was from 1962 and 66. So the planning strategy continued for 35 years, and now this is a three-year sort of short term compared to five-year economic planning period. This three-year economic plan is rather short. Now, previously under the President Park's period, the decision-making process was really, top-down process. The ideas, was coming from the the top policy makers. And but this thing, you know, the 3-year economic plan strategy, they still rely on the market mechanism. And at the same time, they know that sometimes the market is disturbed by the political and economic, unexpected economic shocks coming from outside. And the government needs to come in and to do something to, you know, get the market system operating and to get the economy, you know, moving forward.
There's some regulations that are going to be lifted as part of this plan. What's your view on President Park's push to focus on deregulation?
Speaking of regulations, there are still prudential, necessary regulations that need to be, you know, kept on. But there are, you know, regulations that are outdated already, because as the environment evolves and changes, the old regulations, some of them, not relevant. So those, you know, regulations need to be lifted up as soon as possible. But you know, people, you know, in the front line, especially in the regulation agencies, they don't realize. They don't have so many detailed, you know, regulations here and there, and they can't really find, you know, which one is relevant and, you know,
so this is kind of like clearing up some bureaucratic red tape.
And then that's why, I mean, when the government or the top leader, you know, emphasizes the importance of lifting up the regulations, especially in the investment area, and then they, you know, mobilize the personnel and then try to, you know, see the situation and the details of the, you know, regulations and what type of regulations, and they just sort out, and they, you know, keep the needed, the necessary regulations, you know, just keep them there, and then, you know, just take out all unnecessary, outdated regulations, and then just eliminate them. That's what they do, but it takes time.
Even though this plan seems to focus on the economy, how much of an effect does it have on society, and how much does society have to change in order for these plans to work? You mentioned that the president sets a vision, a goal, and a change of thinking, and even paradigm shifts for the way that the economy goes. Is society ready to handle these changes?
Oh, it depends on how we think. I mean, how we perceive, you know, their approach. I mean, the government's, you know, attitude. Okay. Sometimes the people are just so much cynical about the government's inaction or implementation. And for Korea at the moment, you know, the confrontation between the ruling and the opposition party is so severe, and opinions almost, you know, split up just between the two parties, and they tend to have a mistrust. They don't trust each other very much. So if we can, or if the national leader can reduce, you know, that much of a mistrust, then people can change their mind, you know, their attitude, so that they would conform to the directions, and they become more, you know, confident in the government policies, and they would follow the guidelines. So things would become much different.
So some experts have said that these plans don't really say anything that completely new, that these are ideas that the country has wanted for a while but has never been able to implement. So do you think cooperation is the missing piece of getting this implemented, so that, you know, at the end she achieves her goal of the 474 vision plan, so 4% growth potential, 70% employment rate, and $40,000 in per capita income?
You know, I realize that there is some degree of misunderstanding of this, you know, 474 vision. For example, the first four of the vision indicates the 4% potential growth. It's not an actual growth. I mean, it doesn't mean that the economy is growing every year at a rate of 4%. No, she said, trying to achieve the 4% potential growth. Now, at the present time, Korea's potential growth rate is between 3.6 and 3.8%. So it's not that difficult. I wouldn't think that it would be terribly difficult, for Korea to reach the 4% potential growth rate, because it used to be over 6% or 7% in the past. And if, say, workers, change their mind, make more, strenuous efforts, then the productivity is going to change.
So she's focusing on the capacity of
the
Korean economy, which she has some control over. The rest is up to individuals and private companies and workers.
To the extent that people, change their mind and open up their mind, and they trust, the partners, business partners, and they have confidence in the government or in the policies, then things would, improve to some extent. Now, 70%, the second 7 of the vision indicates is a 70% overall employment rate. Currently, the overall employment rate is 64.4%. And the difference between the 65% and the 70% isn't that much, okay? And the last 4 of the vision indicates the 40,000 US dollars per capita GDP. Now, what is the current, per capita GDP? Well, last year, at the end of last year, Korea's per capita GDP in a PPP criterion was a little bit more than $36,000. What is the thing about PPP? That's the purchasing power parity. Because as you compare the numbers, between the different countries, the numbers need to, convert it into common union. So the GDP, per capita GDP, of every country was converted into, the value in dollar terms. Okay, so the exchange rate was applied. And then that was not enough, because as far as the exchange rate is concerned, that is determined not only by the, trade account transactions, but also capital account transactions. So it could be misleading if you stick with the exchange rate alone. So in addition to that, the price ratios applied. That's how they came up with the per capita GDP in PPP, purchasing power parity. So that was more than, last year's per capita GDP in PPP was more than $36,000.
So it looks like it'll be a clearer road ahead. Thank you so much for your insight tonight.
Well, thank you for being here.
And that does it for us tonight on After 10. Join us again next time. We'll see you soon.